This is the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. I'm joined by Kyler Staley. I'm Drew Rosenberg, and we have another emergency podcast for you. Oumar Ballo, former Arizona center, former Gonzaga player, has committed to Indiana University after taking his visit. Kyler, that's how you're doing, but let's just jump right in. How was initial thoughts on Ballo's commitment?
Yeah, so if you're an Indiana fan, it's obviously a pretty great day right now because you may have just gotten the number one overall transfer portal target player in the transfer portal. So Ballo's, he's a top center in the country. He's been like that for maybe the past 2 years. Really, really good success. Really just was pretty much Arizona's focal point when it came to the post. A lot of times, I know they had Caleb Love this past year, but, Ballo's always been kind of that constant for them. Big body guy, doesn't get out of his let's say comfort zone a little bit. So he's not going to be like a Khalil Ware. He's not going to stretch the floor. He's going to play he's going to play in the paint. He's going to use his body. He's a lot stronger than what Khalil was, where Khalil was more of a finesse center and everything. Oumar Ballo is just the guy that, you feed the ball inside and he's going to use his body and he's just going to make plays, around the rim. And that's just what he does. So, a lot of question marks with this. I feel like there maybe is a little bit of mixed feelings with this. Obviously, everyone knows the talent of what Ballo brings to the floor, but Indiana's back to that inside-out game. And, Mike Woodson said he's not going to go away from it. That's what he sees, at the college level, and that's what he wants to do. So pretty big get and everything, but you do have question marks there. Indiana's going to be pretty heavy in the front court with both Malik Reneau, Ballo. Ballo's not going to come off the bench. He's going to start alongside Malik. It just comes down to, will this work this time around? And honestly, it could work because of the way, the dynamic guards, especially with Miles Rice that they got and, the way that things are trending for, Cannon Carlisle, it could work in everything in every sense. So it's a big get nonetheless for Indiana. So they're just Mike Woodson and the whole staff. They're really just cooking right there.
Yeah, I think on the last podcast, we talked about the two biggest needs for Indiana, especially in the front court, rebounding and shot blocking. Ballo brings both of those things. I think in Arizona in 3 years, he averaged, I want to say 8 rebounds a game. Last year averaged 10 rebounds a game, along with 1.3 blocks per game. I think in Arizona, he averaged 1.2 blocks per game in 3 seasons, including his sophomore year when he was only playing 15 minutes a game, still got 1.2 blocks per game. So his shot blocking, his length on the other end is going to be really big for Indiana. And look at what Mike Woodson wants to do on the defensive end. He wants to have that rim protection from a big, long center. He had it with Khalil Ware last year, Trayce Jackson-Davis the first 2 years of the Mike Woodson era. So now he has this guy to be the center of his defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one main thing, when you enter the transfer portal and you had, at the time, you had 7 open scholarships. One of the key things there, because you knew Khalil Ware was going to go to the NBA, one of the key things was you needed rim protection. And you were spot on about that. And he got a guy there that's arguably one of the best rim protecting guys, in the country. When you look at it, I think Ware was at 1.9 blocks per game and then Ballo's at 1.3. So you're still right in that range where he's going to give you at least, at least 1 block a game or whatever, but he's going to make things difficult, especially if Indiana's getting beat on straight line drives or ever how that works. He's going to be there. And then you kind of hope on the other end, you hope Malik Reneau gets a little bit better in that area too. And if he can develop and become a legit post defender, Indiana's got a really, really good post defense there. But obviously, when you look at the overall picture, the sell was pretty easy for Mike Woodson. Look what I've done with Trayce Jackson-Davis. Look what I've done with Khalil Ware. I can get you to the next level. And that's just very, very enticing when it comes to big guys like Ballo now. I've said it multiple times in our podcast. Mike Woodson's never going to have any trouble, at least being one of the top teams for any big in the country that wants to come and play for Indiana, just because of the success factor that he's had with bigs and developing them. So it's a big get. Indiana right now, they're just checking off boxes. They've got a 5-star McDonald's All-American coming in. They got a freshman coming in. They've got their point guard, Miles Rice, who's one of the best guards in the transfer portal and one of the more high upside guards there is in the country. And then now you've got Ballo, who does have only 1 year of eligibility, but Indiana's kind of in a win now mode. And they needed a guy like Ballo. So it comes down to a lot of things, the guard play, the perimeter play for this to work. Malik Reneau's got to be a little bit better on the defensive end, and Malik Reneau's got to learn to just stretch the floor out a little bit more than what he already was doing. So this could really work. It could, but I understand the worrisome, tendencies that a lot of these Indiana fans may have with this. But overall, you've just got a really, really talented player. And honestly, depending on how the rest of the transfer portal kind of shakes up and everything, Ballo might be the best big in the Big Ten already. So it's just big for Indiana. And, they did a really, really good job with this recruitment.
Yeah, the one thing I will add, though, about Ballo, a lot of good, we mentioned it, but there's also the going back to the two bigs, which is all but guaranteed with Ballo because your Renew's not coming off the bench. Ballo isn't coming to Indiana to come off the bench. So it kind of reinforces the need for shooters. You can play that two bigs if you have the shooters around them. And as the roster stands right now, Indiana doesn't. So that means with plenty of scholarships left to fill, Mike Woodson has his work cut out for him. He's got to land some shooters on this roster because Indiana is going to need it, especially competing against the newer Big Ten teams like UCLA, Eric Musselman over at USC. They're going to be very good, very quick. Dane Altman at Oregon. Like, the Big Ten is only getting better, and the needs of shooting is only going to be re-emphasized with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Miles Rice, he is a capable three-point shooter, but obviously the numbers are a little bit worrisome. Yeah. But you got to remember he's a freshman. A lot of freshmen struggle from behind the arc in that way. And then let's just say, in a perfect world that they end up landing Cannon Carlisle, same kind of thing. He is a capable shooter, but, the numbers aren't very good. So, yeah, absolutely. Indiana's going to still need to go after just a knockdown shooter, a guy that knows his role, kind of like that Miller Kopp role, the guy that's just going to sit in the perimeter and he's just going to wait for the ball. They still need that. They still maybe need one or two guys, and maybe like a Ryan Conwell will be that guy if they, if that kind of continues to kind of blossom in that recruitment. Obviously, they didn't get Connor Hickman, who just committed to Cincinnati yesterday. So, so it's still a lot of needs. It's going to be really, really interesting because right now you have 4 open scholarships. I mean, Carlisle looks really good, so you're probably – maybe by the time next week, you're going to have 3 open scholarships. So you got to kind of figure out what you need. They definitely need another front court player. They need a backup for Malik and for Ballo, someone that can be really dependable in that kind of situation. So, and then maybe 2 more shooters. And honestly, maybe a shooter and just a hybrid forward, somebody that you can kind of just play wherever, a utility player. That would be really nice to have. But obviously, Indiana's doing a really, really good job right now. Mike Woodson's killing it right now in the portal. And, he's out there recruiting guys that they really needed. So, got to give major props to them. Ballo's going to come in and he's going to be an impact player right away for Indiana. So, if you're an Indiana fan, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, you're feeling really happy for the most part.
Yeah, you look at Ballo, if you're able to land Carlisle, and then you have Miles Rice right there. That's 3 of the top 15 according to 247 Sports Transfer Portal rankings. Ballo, obviously the number one. I guess he's, according to 247, the only 5-star transfer. So says a lot about him. I mean, we saw him play personally last year, or 2 years ago now, against Indiana. Indiana was without Hochefino. Arizona handedly won that game. But Ballo made his stats, 15 and 12 rebounds. But the reason they won that game was the way he shut down Trace Jackson Davis. That was Trace Jackson Davis's superstar season, and he held Trace Jackson Davis to 11 points, 4 for 10 shooting, 5 rebounds, and Trace fouled out of that game. So if you want to know what he's able to do against some of the best bigs in the country, that was 2 years ago. Ballo's probably gone better, stronger, and Woodson's only going to help that. So that's a pretty good eye test for the first, I guess, probably the only time a lot of Indiana fans have probably watched him play.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can go back and watch that game. Like you said, Trace Jackson Davis had a superstar year, was almost the National Player of the Year. And Ballo just manhandled him for the most part. He's a walking double-double. That's what he does. He's really, really going to help in the rebounding. Indiana's been struggling with rebounding. And he's a guy that's just, active when it comes to the glass. He wants that ball. He wants to get it. And what I really like, if you go and watch film on him, which we've got on HoosierIllustrated.com, if you go in and watch the film, I love how quick he is to get into the post. He is just a man right there, and he wants to get in the post, and he shows really quick feet when it comes to there. Once he's in the post and he's got the ball, he's going to do everything in his power, and he's got a lot of power to either dunk on you or he's going to finish strong at the rim. So you've got a good guy. I mean, he is a big guy, but he's got a really great motor too, which is nice. So Khalil Ware's motor was, much more improved from where when he was at Oregon. But, there's still some signs last year where his motor just wasn't always there a little bit, but Ballo was going to play with an excellent motor the entire time. So really experienced guy. Indiana's going to have one of the more experienced front courts in the Big Ten this year. It's a big get. for Indiana for the most part. And honestly, for the way things are trending up, Indiana might end up having the number 1 overall transfer portal class when all things are said and done. So that's exciting. But Ballo, big get here, literally. So we'll just see kind of how that plays out.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to add about Ballo kind of before we wrap up. 3.6 offensive rebounds per game last year. Indiana had it a little bit with Kluge Ware, but the biggest thing is 15.1% offensive rebound percentage, which advanced stats. So like take it as what you will, but that having that kind of presence on the offensive glass is going to be huge, especially in a year when the Big Ten is kind of, I guess for the first time in a while, it seems like it's lacking the talent of the bigs that we've seen in the past. There's no Zach Edey, there's no Trace, there's no Hunter Dickinson. Cliff Amoria is not coming back to Rutgers. So kind of having Ballo's presence on the offensive glass is going to be really big for, I guess, stealing extra possessions in those tight Big Ten grinded out games.
Yeah, major advantage already at the post for Indiana. We'll just see kind of what happens with the rest of the transfer portal, when it comes to the front court area for other teams. But we've got a really, really good breakdown. I'm going to give a little shameless plug to my scouting report article. We've got a really good breakdown there, on HoosierIllustrated.com, and you'll get to learn everything. I really went into great detail with what Ballo brings on the floor for Indiana and what kind of that system is going to look like next year. So go to HoosierIllustrated.com. We got highlight videos of there so you can see a little bit more of Ballo's game. We've got the scouting report, but just kind of keep checking on HoosierIllustrated.com to see for more emergency podcasts, I hope, with other transfers and just other coverage about Indiana and, the upcoming next season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Hoosier Illustrated transfer portal tracker. You and Alec have, done an incredible job on that. All the details on who Indiana's even just contacting. Nothing, not even like every single player they're offering. It's every single thing Indiana is doing in the transfer portal. It is on that transfer tracker. As I've probably said a million times on this podcast, for all things IU athletics, follow Indiana_FRN on Twitter, Facebook, and check out the HoosierIllustrated.com website. And make sure to subscribe on both YouTube and Spotify. Hoosier Illustrated is also partnered with Tom Brady's company Autograph to streamline our coverage. So you can do what you do best. Follow IU Sports. Use the code IndianaFR to get started today. Mike Woodson is not done in the portal, most likely, and we're not done covering the portal, so we'll have plenty of more stuff about the transfer portal, what Indiana's roster is going to look like next year. So make sure you guys are checking it out. We're going to have so much. As always, thank you for tuning in to Talking About the Hoosiers podcast. We'll be back soon.